Hello, everybody, and welcome to Virtual Bourbon. My name is Steve Akley, and we have a fun event tonight. We're going to be tasting some old Yellowstone. And what I think is so cool about this event is we're going to be drinking some Yellowstone that celebrated their 100th anniversary. And we're doing this event as they celebrate their 150th anniversary. So we're going to talk to our special guest tonight, Mr. Steve Beam, a little bit about that. What are some of the plans for 150 and things like that? And he and I were talking just a little bit off the air, and sounds like they got some cool stuff coming up. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Steve Beam. Steve, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Steve. Great to be here. Thanks
Yeah,
for everybody for coming in and trying out some Yellowstone, and I
yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
everybody putting it together.
I think it's so cool that you're here and you're doing this. You're just like on these events when we always do this. We have a distillery representative. You're playing along, as am I. So you and I do have no idea if number one or number two is the old Yellowstone or the new. We don't know, and we'll be playing along with you guys. We'll be voting at the end. We always keep our special guests the last vote though, so you can't just copy off Steve. So yeah, so we'll see. But with that, I'd like to now turn it over to our the true master of ceremonies for tonight, the guy who puts all this stuff together, who goes out and finds that old whiskey and brings these opportunities to us and does all the research about the brands, Mr. Wes Hardin. Hey, Wes.
Hey, Steve, how's it going?
Good, man. Good.
Yeah, we got a good one. I think before we get started, we got a few people on here. We usually run a pretty consistent crew, about half regulars and half new people, which is always great. We get more people we get involved, the better. So I want to kind of walk through what we're going to do tonight. So everyone has a sample that should be labeled 1 and 2. Throughout the evening, I'll prompt everyone to start nosing and tasting, and we'll share and compare notes and so forth. What I would like to ask everyone to do is hold off on any comments on which one you think is the dusty or which one you like the best until the very end. We go around after all of the history's given, and we've had a chance to go through the whiskeys, and obviously Steve has a chance to talk and so forth before we get into some questions and answers at the end. We go through a round robin, give everyone a chance to do the vote. So along the way, we want to share obviously our thoughts of both of the whiskeys, but let's hold our opinions on those two titles to the end. It's always fun to get the final tally, say how many people are right or wrong on the dusty or not, and then which one you like. There's no right and wrong. It's your opinion of which one you like better than the other, and it's always part of the fun.
Well, Steve B might tell you there is a right or wrong answer to that one.
He might be, but he's the exception to the rule.
Yes, he's like you got to.
He gets special guest exemption. Yes. He can kind of do what he wants to. So
yeah, guess the Dusty too. Our longest winning streak right now is Eric Johnson, who's on here, the Iowa Eric Johnson. Eric, what's your streak sitting at right now? You're guessing the Dusty correctly.
I think if I get credit for proactively guessing the event I couldn't make last time.
Yeah, but you got it in. It was by proxy. Mike did it by proxy for you.
Thank you, Mike. So I believe I'm sitting at 4, and this will be going for 5.
Okay, he's going for 5. So the all-time record is 16 in a row by Rick the Legend Brenner. So that's how you get a nickname like the Legend. So
yeah, this guessing which is the Dusty is kind of like golf. It's very much a mental sport. Since the Legend broke his streak, he's actually 0 for 2. He went back-to-back misses in events, so it can get to you mentally, and you may not recover. So we'll see what that
does. yes, his psyche was crushed. So yeah,
his psyche is absolutely crushed. Yep. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump into obviously bourbon history. We're talking about Yellowstone specifically, you can go down 100 rabbit holes. You can go into some of the family lineage with the Beams, which I'm not going to do. That's really, and Steve, jump in at any time and add, correct, tell me to shut up, whatever you need to do. What I've chosen to do is kind of go back through the brand history of Yellowstone and kind of talk about predominantly the brand history. Again, as you go through these histories, and we've seen this on a lot of our events, you can start branching off into these different areas, and you can, sometimes create 3 different events out of one topic if you really want to. But for tonight, we're going to kind of talk about the brand history. So I want to talk about a little history. We'll stop and we'll look at sample 1. We'll drink it. We'll sample it. We'll get into some more history. We'll go to sample 2. Just to be clear, what we're sampling in no particular order. One of the samples is the current off-the-shelf 93 proof Yellowstone offering that comes out of Limestone. The other came out of a 1972 decanter a
Yep.
Yellowstone.
Oh, Steve's got one. There you go. That's
Yeah, I sent it to Steve. Yeah, I
Yeah.
sent that one to him. That one's from the event.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
So I thought he may want to put it up at the distillery or at home or whatever. So I sent it to him. Said thank you for joining us tonight. So yeah, he received a much larger box than everybody else. So we had that box on there for him. Yeah. So one of these two is the whiskey that came out of that very decanter Steve just had on the screen. And again, it's commemorating the opening of Yellowstone is what it really amounts to. So based on that, it's a 1972 sample. One of these two are. If you do the quick math, 1872 is when Yellowstone bourbon was first created. It was first produced by JB, as in Boy Dant, out of the Cold Springs Distillery in, is it Gethsemane? Is that how you pronounce it, Steve?
Gethsemane.
Gethsemane, thank you.
Yeah.
I've always struggled with that. In Gethsemane, he was the son of the famous J.W. Dant. So just, a quick little lineage there. So 1872, they were producing Yellowstone out of that distillery. The Cold Springs Distillery is what they called it at the time. In 65, which was actually before 72, there was a company called D.H. Taylor and Company. It's not E.H., it's D as in dog H. Had basically become the main customer of that distillery. And this was also at the time where not everyone was, there wasn't a lot of single bottlings at the time. They were still selling whiskey by the barrel, and then people were taking it and having people come to their store or their sales office or their warehouse or wherever, and they were filling basically, it's today's version of going to the convenience store and filling up your own soda container. So they were buying by the jug or by the container whiskey. So his biggest customer was D.H. Taylor and Company. And the whiskey had a pretty good reputation. And he was actually, D.H. Taylor was selling it in markets across America. So it was basically the equivalent of what an NDP does today. So some of the big guys, MGP, Beam, Barton is big with making whiskey, selling it to NDPs, and they would put their own brand or label on it and sell it. In this particular case, it was more barrel by barrel than it was anything. There was a salesman called Charles Townsend. He started traveling. He was a salesman. He was traveling out west. So at the same time, we're kind of running into the heart of the Western expansion. Everybody's heading out west to make their fortunes. You've got towns that pop up. You've got brothels, saloons, the whole 9 yards. Whiskey was a extremely popular drink and probably the predominant drink. And so as people go, whiskey goes. So he's traveling out west. And he kind of, as he's traveling around to these towns and these bars, and he's selling this whiskey, he starts kind of talking to people and said, "Hey, what do you think of this brand?" He said, "What would you think if we were to open up and create a brand and commemorate the opening of Yellowstone National Park?" And the thought behind it was, because Yellowstone's in the West and it's a new park that's open, the thought would be, hey, this is a way we could sell this whiskey on the West Coast and people can resonate the name Yellowstone with the new park. So basically what they decided is to take certain amounts of stock of the Dance bourbon and brand it as Yellowstone. So it was widely popular. In 1876, John T. Williams joined Taylor, and they formed a pretty well-known company named Taylor and Williams at the time, based out of Louisville, which back then, although the distilleries were mostly in the rural areas outside of Whiskey Row, most everyone's sales office, as they always called it, was in the big city. And at that point, it was Louisville. There was a handful in Lexington, but for the most part, everyone had their main sales office based out of Louisville. So they formed Taylor and Williams. Their flagship brand was Yellowstone. But they also sold, and I've never seen either one of these bottles, and it's pre-prohibition, so I probably won't, but Honeydew and Rich Hill. But all of that whiskey was made by J.B. Dant and Gethsemane. And when bottling became economical for distillers, so they started bottling as opposed to selling by barrels for the most part, the brand was bottled with the label featuring the waterfall from Yellowstone Park. And then Williams retired, sold the company to JB Dant in 1900, who then died, and then he died a few years later in 1903. So what I want to do for a second is take a quick second. Let's take a break on some of the history. We'll stop there. Let's go ahead and get into sample one. If you haven't poured it yet, I want to get everyone's initial thoughts on nosing, tasting, whatever else you get in the glass. I can't figure out what that note is.
I mean, I like it on the nose. It's kind of like light brown sugar. With a twist of citrus. What else are you guys getting on the nose?
I'm with you, Steve. I'm getting a little citrus at the end there. A twist is a nice way to put it.
Yeah. It's not overwhelming, but it's just nice, very pleasant.
And the brown sugar for me is almost like a praline.
Yeah.
You know,
Anything else? Feel free to open up your mics if you don't.
You know what's
have them
weird
open.
is that citrus to me comes off is almost like a lime, which I've never really had, which is very strange. I've never had on a bourbon, but it's not like the sourness of a lemon. It's more, to me, limes are a little sweeter than lemons, a little less acidic and sour.
Yeah, definitely.
I get that for
lot
sure.
of deep vanilla, personally. Not that that's uncommon for bourbon, but this one is like almost,
Vanilla bomb, you'd say?
yeah.
Vanilla bomb.
Has a really nice mouthfeel too.
She's working ahead. Well, there's two of them, so. All right, let's try it. Let's see.
Oh,
what
we were
got.
getting to taste it.
That's it. Or two, three, yeah.
you know, the you were talking about the sales office in Louisville, and that's where Taylor and Williams was. The distillery was in Gethsemane, but the Fraser Historical Museum there on Main Street was Taylor and Williams' office.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
huh.
at least part of it. You know, part of, I think there's like 2 storefronts there. It's one of those storefronts was Taylor and Williams.
That's
I did a
interesting.
talk down there, and the guy had done research and found out that it was, and they had changed the street numbers, so it was really confusing to figure out what it was. At one point, they changed street numbers. So
Got it. That's cool. I didn't know that for sure.
And one of the best bourbon ball makers in Kentucky is a couple doors down from the Fraser Museum.
Who's that?
You'd have to ask me, I can't remember. I know it's right 2 doors down, I think, from there. They make, if you bring your own bottle, personal bottle of something old, they'll make bourbon balls out of it for you. They bring it to the Fraser Museum for all the different events they have.
About Art Eatables?
For the bourbon.
Yeah.
They closed that location.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. They had to move
during
it,
COVID.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting ready to open a new downtown location in a different location. They're out on the East End now
Yeah.
in St. Matthews, J-Town. Right? Anybody else have any tasting or nosing notes on number 1? Does anyone want to share?
I do get some of that citrus on the palate as well.
Yeah.
I think the palate is in the front of the palate is kind of a fruit bomb for me. It's a lot of different fruit notes, and then you get a little bit of you get a nice Kentucky hug with a little bit like a cinnamon baking spice on the back end for me.
I get a little cherry on the finish.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely
I think so
fruit
too.
forward for
Yeah.
me anyway.
yeah, we're getting cherry and brown sugar as well on ours between the two
Okay.
of us.
Yeah. I think that brown sugar on the nose is there on the taste too. I agree.
I would agree. All right, I'm going to jump back into some history here while we're let you guys finish up sampling number 1. So
We're off to a good start though. This is a good
good.
one. Yeah.
It is a good one. So
Yeah.
we got a lot more to go, actually. So in 1906, JB Dant like most everyone else, they moved their offices to Louisville. And it remained there, and that's their offices, not the distillery. Moved the offices to Louisville, remained there to Prohibition. In 1910, Taylor and Williams purchased the MC Beam Distillery, which was also in Gethsemane. And there they made Yellowstone at both distilleries. So right before Prohibition, Yellowstone, their idea of naming this bourbon after the newly opened park out west paid off in spades. And it became so popular that they're actually, so if you think about it, and I'd have to do some really deep research to figure out, and maybe Steve knows, especially the Dant Gethsemane. I don't know what their, at that time in the early 1900s, I don't know what their per day capacity was, but even if it was, 10 bushels, 20 bushels, 30 bushels, whatever the case may be, back then for one brand to kind of warrant the demand of two different facilities is pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah,
back in the
that really
early
is.
1900s. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, the original Cold Spring distillery was relatively small, but it was not tiny, but it was pretty small. But the MC Beam distillery was pretty large, modern
Okay.
facility for that at that time.
Nice.
So so that tells you how popular the Yellowstone brand was, and again, their kind of marketing gamble paid off. They picked a good horse to jump on and rode that thing. During Prohibition,
Steve, I have a
Okay.
question. Steve, did they have like an alliance with the park from the beginning, or was it just they named it?
They just named it.
Okay, they
Yeah.
just named it. Gotcha.
It was
Yeah,
the
I-
Wild
I-
West back then.
Yeah, I know you've got a relationship with the Park Service now, but yeah, I didn't know if that.
Well,
was
with the National Parks Conservation Association.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I looked to see if I could find anything about that, and there was nothing that suggested they had an affiliation, so I just assumed they did.
Yeah.
During Prohibition, Yellowstone brand, sorry, was sold to Taylor Williams, was sold for Taylor Williams by Brown-Forman. So as we know, we've been through quite a few of these events. There were a very small handful of companies that had a medicinal whiskey license. So the way a lot of these companies that didn't have the license got away with selling off their stocks in their stores is they teamed with a Brown-Forman, teamed with a Taylor, teamed with Glenmore, teamed with one of those big distilleries that had the medicinal license, and they sold their whiskey through those companies for medicinal purposes. In a lot of cases, as we know through some of our events, a lot of companies just simply threw in the towel and sold all of their inventories and their aged stock and their aging stock, and that was their ticket out of the industry, and they never recuperated after Prohibition. This is not one of those cases, but to kind of survive and get through Prohibition, they did sell their inventory of Yellowstone through Brown-Forman, which is one of the companies that had a medicinal license. Taylor Williams kept the brand, and the whiskey was owned by them, but it was sold by Brown-Forman, and they basically charged a fee for bottling and storing. Is what it really amounts to. So you come out of Prohibition, 1933, Taylor Williams built a new distillery in Shively outside of Louisville, which was at the time, must have been a pretty popular place to put distilleries because there were quite a few out there. There still are building wise. So there's a story, I don't know if this is substantiated or not. I couldn't find anything absolutely true or not. But there's a story that when they built the new distillery, they decided to move one of their warehouses from Gethsemane to Louisville for storage. And this is what they called Warehouse A. So that was like the
He's shaking his
first
head.
warehouse.
Yes.
Yeah. So I thought it was, I didn't know back in those days how feasible that was to literally move a warehouse. So that's why I didn't know if I should trust the data or
And
not.
I believe that Wes Henderson told me that it was the one they have.
Yeah, so that is something I absolutely found. That was actually going to be my next comment, was that was eventually, so when that distillery years later, that West End distillery ended up shuttering down and ending, that one warehouse was sold to Angel's Envy. Yeah, to the Hendersons. So that was kind of it's another one of we talk about these on these Dusty's events all the time, of when you go back through the history of these brands and these people and these distilleries, it's just so many people and so many things are intertwined, and it's just a matter of digging through the information and pulling out what's out there. As most all of the distilleries went through, not very long after Prohibition ended, came World War II. The government, like they always do, they leaned on the distilleries to switch over and make fuel instead of whiskey to support the war effort. And in 1944, the company decided to sell the company to Glenmore Distillery. So in 44, the company switched over from Taylor and Williams and was purchased by Glenmore. Glenmore, huge company out of Owensboro. They've got a long, rich history that we'll get into in a future event. So as of 1944, all of Yellowstone, basically, that brand went to Glenmore along with the other brands out of the distillery. Glenmore made Yellowstone one of their flagship brands. So a lot of times these acquisitions we've seen over the years, especially in the 40s and 50s, when we call it the Big Five, kind of bought everyone up post-Prohibition. A lot of those old brands shuttered. They would literally just picked up capacity, and if there were a couple of really high-level popular labels, they would keep producing those. Yellowstone was one of that, and it was definitely one of their flagship brands starting in 1944. Let's take a second. Let's go ahead and jump into sample 2, and then I'll get through the rest of the history here. Just a bit. One thing I did notice in these two, just comparing them, there's not a lot of difference in the glass, which was interesting to me as far as color goes. Sometimes we get these events,
True.
you know, depending on what, you know, especially when you get whiskey from the 70s, 80s, you know, you're starting to get into that glut period where it may be age stated and it says it's 6 years, but the reality is it's got a little 6 and a lot of 8 and 10 or 12, or you get into a bottled and bond that ends up having 8 and 10 year in it. In this case, these were pretty close in color, which was interesting.
This bottle says it was aged 90 months.
Okay.
So that's 7.5 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, quick math, it's over 7 years. So okay.
Yeah.
And most Yellowstones were 6-year-old.
Okay.
Okay.
Which was probably the most popular age of that time period, I would say, from what I've seen. Especially National Distillers was pretty famous for not releasing much over 6 to 8 years in the 40s, 50s, 60s. It was so popular they really couldn't afford to let whiskey age too long. The sales were too high at all distilleries. What do we think about sample 2?
I'm getting some peanut brittle on the nose. What about anybody else? Anything of note? on the
Yeah.
nose?
Yeah, Steve, peanut brittle and maybe like some Payday candy bar, a little
Okay.
caramel in the back.
Oh, caramel peanut combo.
Yeah.
It's a
Payday
favorite.
is one of the
It's an underrated
candy bars. Yes, it's underrated. It's very
It's
good.
underrated.
Very good.
Very
Much
salty.
lighter nose than the first one. Nothing's
Mm-hmm.
really coming through solid one.
Yeah.
Okay.
This
Yeah,
one
to me, it's not so. To me, it's not as much a lighter nose. It's a different nose. I don't get that kind of in your face fruit and brown sugar,
Mhm.
but I do get the peanut brittle that Steve was talking about,
Mhm.
and I get a little bit of like almost like a mint licorice kind of. Similar to what you would get, not nearly to the degree that you would get on a lot of high rye bourbons or 95.5 rye whiskeys, but I get a little bit
Almost,
of that.
almost a little piney, I think.
Piney.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's almost it's very similar to what you would get for barrels that maybe spent a majority of their time on lower ricks. You get outside of some of those super fruity, super brown sugar, and you start getting more even like balanced noses, and you get a little earthy tones, and you get I get anything that's earthy tone comes out to me as mint and licorice for whatever reason. which is odd because I don't even like to eat licorice, but I do like it on a bourbon.
There you go. All right, let's try it. Let's see what we got.
Nice long finish, spice bomb on the palate.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's odd is on the palate, I do get some of that fruit back though.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of juicy fruit. Kind of sweet fruit, juicy fruit. Yeah, interesting. It does have the spices, as you say, and does stick around for a while too. So it's interesting.
I get the mint that Wes was talking about more in the first mouthfeel. Definitely a burn. Much spicier, a lot of spices.
Yeah,
Short finish.
definitely reminiscent of a higher rye bourbon. I don't know if it's crazy high or not, but I think it's a. What I like about both of these is I don't, on the nose and even on the taste or the mouthfeel, I don't get any ethanol, any, like that straight alcohol burn. It's all flavored Kentucky hug, spice. There's a flavor attached to the warmness in the mouth as opposed to like a youthful ethanol that you get on some whiskeys. I don't get any of that out of either one of these.
Let's
It's
see what
not
Tim
as fruity
Swide's
as,
got. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead, Melanie.
it's not as fruity as the first one, and it has a little bit drier finish, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
I definitely think it has drier finish.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
Let's hear from Tim Swide. He was a little late joining us, so he's got to
He's
get
been
caught
keeping
up.
score so far, I'm sure.
Yeah. So Tim, you want to
Typical with Yellowstone events and playing catch up, but nice seeing everybody here. Now this one, there's a. I don't want to. It's a very, very sweet tobacco is what I'm getting on this, deep in that nose. It's definitely a lighter nose. I think you guys all hit it when it comes down to the peanut brittle. There is on that palate. There's a deeper note there that I go back to a tobacco, not a smoke, but like a sweet tobacco that's there. That's more rich and flavorful. That's behind there if you wait for it. And I think that's what I get in that hug after a while. It just sits right in the back, just past mid palate, and just kind of sits there and lets you know what's going on. I'm here to stay. This one is. I'm not going to give you my guess, but I really enjoy this one. This one's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Very unsuspecting on that finish.
Tim, I like the sneaky product placement in our right rear view of your. It's your left, our right, but nice product placement there. So
I got the whole lot except for 2021, and that's where we're going to talk to Mr. Beam after the camera goes off. I need to find a bottle.
That's the only one you're missing. 2015, you got in there.
2015 all the way through. Yeah, all the limited editions.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
I'm going to jump back into the history. When we get done with the history, we're going to go back and do a last quick visit, and we'll obviously want to hear from anybody else that has any further sample 1, sample 2 tasting notes before we start voting here in a minute.
Yes. And then I want to hear from Mr. Beam about what they're doing for the big 150th anniversary this year. So
Yeah.
Perfect. Absolutely.
That information too.
All right, so we stopped around 1944. We know that the Yellowstone brand is now a part of Glenmore. In 1956, they started an advertising campaign for Yellowstone. They started calling it Mellow Mash, and it kind of led to this expression of Yellowstone called Mellow Mash. Now, what I couldn't find out was there actually a bottling of Yellowstone? I remember seeing an old label. It was like a black label with like a 7-year age statement, and I'm pretty sure it said Yellowstone Mellow Mash underneath.
There was
that was the
yes.
bottle. That was this. Okay, so that makes sense then, because I remember seeing that one time. I haven't had a bottle, but I remember seing the bottle, and I couldn't figure out why they changed and went to that Mellow Mash.
That was Buddy Thompson's pet project, who was Thompson who owned Glenmore. And that was his favorite little project. They only did like 2,000 cases a year of it. It was their highest end thing, and they placed it in very special bars and places around the country. And Chris Morris, when he took over with National Distillers, he was in charge. That was his first project. Was
Oh, wow.
Oh, interesting.
So
Steve,
did they,
have you,
go ahead, Steve.
I was just gonna say, Steve, have you ever been lucky enough to try some of that old mellow mash?
I have.
Oh,
I
cool,
have.
cool. That's what's neat about this industry. You know, if you,
Yeah.
and you get to taste history.
5 or 6 years ago, there was not quite a bit, but it was not extremely rare.
Uh-huh.
You know, you don't see it as much now, but you know, a few years ago, it was one that popped up on occasion.
Yeah.
So did they do anything different with it, Steve, or was it just they just let it age an extra year in that 7-year range and called it
It was
mellow mash?
supposed to be. It was marketed as the very lightest vapors off the still.
Oh, perfect. I like it. Like manna from heaven.
Yes.
So I don't know what they did, but that was what it was. It was like the lightest,
All right.
most, you know. But I do know that that was a pet project of Buddy Thompson's, and he said the first thing that United did when they took over was to cut that project. And he was not happy.
Yeah, they must have at least bottled that. I don't know about production wise. They must have bottled that for quite a few years, because the bottle that I saw was from like the late 80s or early 90s.
Yeah, I think it went through from the 70s up until well, they sold out in either 92 or 93 to United, and and that's when it was cut shortly thereafter.
Okay, that makes sense then, because the bottle I saw, it was like an 89 or a 90 or 91, something like that. It wasn't that long ago. It was long ago, but not that long ago. So yeah, so they had a pretty good, had a, you know, a 20-year run, give or take, on the mellow mash on top of the rest. So okay, it's interesting. I learned something there. So yeah, so in 1966, and what's strange about this is I've run into a lot of the history in different decades of what people consider the most popular bourbon. And even in the 60s, you know, the bourbon craze, especially in the 60s and getting to the 70s and 80s, the bourbon craze wasn't there. In fact, it was going the opposite direction. But back then, you didn't have obviously social media and this immediate gathering and analysis of information and things of that nature. So you take some of these things, I think, with a little bit of a grain of salt. But I think it's pretty safe to say, in '66, it's considered that Yellowstone was one of, if not the most popular brands in Kentucky in the 60s. I think production out of 2 distilleries probably warranted that accomplishment. It was super popular. In 72, so 72, we're getting to the year where one of these samples is from. As we know, to commemorate the centennial of the brand and Yellowstone National Park, the label was changed to feature the Old Faithful geyser instead of the falls in Yellowstone. So that was the big celebration mark in 72. As we all know, in 70s, bourbon sales started declining pretty heavily. Clear spirits movement was coming. Bourbon was an old person's drink. It was your granddad's drink. So along with a ton of distilleries, Glenmore started making some moves finally in the 80s. So in 85, they decided to shut down that distillery in Shively, which was the Williams and Taylor distillery originally, and then hence that warehouse that ended up getting sold to Angel's Envy at some point. 91, Glenmore, they slowed production down, and they just kind of, it seems like in the 80s, they don't really say, but it smells to me like they kind of saw the writing on the wall and started coming up with a plan to just kind of ease out of the bourbon production world. So in 91, they had dwindling stocks, and they kind of were trying to make a decision whether to reopen Yellowstone or the Medley Distillery in Owensboro. But instead, they sold it all to United Distillers, and neither were reopened to support Yellowstone. So I think that's, you know, obviously when you have those sales and acquisitions, you know, that's all paperwork, logos and things, but there's still whiskey in warehouses sitting and aging. There may or may not be production for a certain amount of time, depending on what the contracts say and so forth. So you can still do things like sell a brand, sell a distillery, and still have subsequent bottlings year after year for a couple of years after that. In 93, so this was very common in the 90s, is one company would buy a set of distilleries or labels, and 3 years later they sell part here, part there. United was not any different. So in 93, they sold the brand and a package deal to Heaven Hill. So that's where Heaven Hill gained quite a few of their labels that a lot they use today, a lot they've shuttered, and a lot they have setting in their label room, just waiting to come out with a special offering one day. But yeah, they sold the brand in a package deal to Heaven Hill, who basically in turn sold it to David Sherman, who is a company out of St. Louis. Steve, you'll like that. St. Louis's very own. Yeah.
David Sherman is Luxco.
Yeah, exactly. And then from what I saw, it looks like the distillery was sold to Florida distillers, and they used it to make a flavoring spirit for fortified wines and bottled cocktails, which was weird. And then eventually it was torn down and the warehouse was sold to Angel's Envy, which goes back to what Steve's comment was earlier. And then as Steve just said, David Sherman became Luxco in 06. And then I think is in 15, they purchased a share or a portion of Limestone with you guys, Steve.
Right.
Yep, 15. And the rest is history. We're here today with Limestone. Limestone produces all of the Yellowstone products that are out there. They're 93 proof, which is what we're sampling. They're barrel proof single barrel expressions. And then obviously once a year, they come out with their limited edition specials as well. You've been doing the limited edition since what, 15?
2015 was our first.
15? Oh, yeah. So you've got a good 7-year run, well, soon to be 7-year run of limited edition. So that's kind of a quick history of the brand. Like I said, we could go off on all kinds of tangents if we had 3 hours to go through it, but it's another one of those brands that, you know, until you dig into the history, a lot of people just associate Yellowstone with your distillery in the last 6 years, 7 years.
Or worse, the television show.
Or worse, the television show. But yeah, if you sit down and do your bourbon history, or you attend an event like this, you find out that it's another one of these brands that has a rich bourbon history that it's a story that deserves to be told, along with you know, everyone knows Maker's story, everyone knows Beam's story, everyone I don't know if everyone knows the full story of OFC, George T. Stagg, Ancient Age, Buffalo Trace, but you know, Old Forester, everyone knows their stories, but these are the stories that I like telling, or brands that people just don't associate with having, you know, 100+ years of history. They just, you know, they say, oh, Limestone Branch, new distillery, Yellowstone, new product, and away we go. But it's actually quite the opposite of that. So very interesting stuff.
Yeah, you know, I like to point out that Yellowstone is one of the few bourbons that have been continuously sold since the 1870s. You know, we've never been interrupted. We went to a non-distiller producer when Luxco had it, David Sherman and Luxco had it, but it was always on the market. You know, it was always on the shelf since 1872.
Yeah, that's a big deal. There's only a handful of companies that can say that, or a handful of brands, I guess it would be. Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and Bill Samuels told me that Yellowstone was the best-selling bourbon in Kentucky back in the 60s and 70s. He said a third of all the bourbon sold in Kentucky was Yellowstone.
Oh wow, yeah, that's the research I've found said that. So I had to double check it because I thought it sounded a little strange, but no, it's absolutely true. So
yeah, he said it was. He said not only he said that's what he said. He said not only were they the best-selling, he said they were best-selling by far.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
They were a bootlegger's favorite.
The bootleggers. Nice.
I know that. So they were bootlegged in all the dry counties around Kentucky.
Nice. Steve, you just always had a passion for it. It was always your dream as you're starting that distillery, even though there's no path to make this happen. It's your dream to bring Yellowstone into the family. And then you just have to figure out how we're going to make this happen. Right.
Yellowstone, or honestly, J.W. Dant was another one that I was interested in.
Sure.
But Yellowstone just worked out well. And in all honesty, Yellowstone suits me and my family better because it does have both sides, the beans and the dance involved in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
You know, there was a bean distiller in Yellowstone up until the 70s. You know, so my grandfather's first cousin was, you know, the distiller there until the 70s. So and it's just, and it was something that it's a brand that I always remember. I knew more about Yellowstone growing up than I did Jim Beam, you know, because there's just this closeness to our family.
Yeah. So this being the 150th anniversary of Yellowstone, there's got to be something going on. And I know you and I talked a little bit beforehand, and whatever you want to share that's going to be happening this year.
So we've got several different things going on, but the first thing we've already done is we released a landmark label, which, you know, we had the Falls and Old Faithful, and now there's 6 different illustrations on the bottle. So let's see here. I thought I had a bottle of the new, but anyway, they I guess I have all the older stuff. But we have 6 different, you know, we have like this has the waterfall. That's what the traditional, but we have, you know, Old Faithful. We have the Prismacolor pools, and then some meadows, and 6 different locations around the park. So that's pretty cool. And then later on, we have our 6-year-old that we're releasing under a family recipe label, and really excited about that.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So
but that won't be a Yellowstone label. That'll be something.
It will be Yellowstone.
Okay.
It'll be Yellowstone.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yellowstone cool. Family recipe.
Oh, cool.
And so that will be out. Should be out. It should start showing up in out there a little bit soon.
Okay.
You know.
Is this going to be a real tough one to find, or is it gift shop only, or what's
it will be nationwide, but there's not a lot.
Okay.
It'd be about like the 2015.
Okay.
You know, I think there's 3,000 cases or something like that.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, not a lot. And then we're coming out with the of course the limited edition again this year as well. So
it's actually a good thing, but it took me 2 or 3 stops to find the current 93 proof, you know, shelf item for this event. I thought, well, I'll just run down the street and grab a bottle, and first place was out, second place was out, and I thought, oh shit, I'm gonna have a hard time finding this thing. And then 3rd or 4th place I went to finally had it. So
we talk about the show. The show has a lot to do with
I bet.
So every single distributor in the country was out of it in December.
No, I guarantee it.
A lot of stores were out, and I know the store down here. I'm in Florida right now, and my local Target carries it, and I always watch because they have it right in the window there. So I go by, I always watch, and they were out of it from like December 10th, and they just got in about 10 days ago. So
yeah, there was an interview with the people from Coors, because on the show they drink that Coors Banquet. It's only beer placement you see on that show, and evidently Coors Banquet style sales have like skyrocketed since that show came out. But there's not an episode that goes by where you don't see someone popping one of those little short pony keg bottles of Coors.
Well, they don't drink our whiskey on the show.
I noticed that.
We advertise. We can't afford to have them drink our whiskey on the show. but most people think it's us anyway, so it doesn't make any sense.
It's true. Yeah. You get the namesake, so yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that seems like just a natural marriage made, that you would think that at some point the lawyers and the bean counters, mainly on their side, could get out of the way and say, look, this makes perfect sense. Like, we don't need to charge these guys a fortune. There's a bourbon literally named after our show. Let's do work with you guys and do a Yellowstone TV show version with their emblem on it and all. There's all kinds of stuff you could do.
There are different things. Yeah.
Our advertising budget last year, we spent more on the show than we made the first year I was in business.
Really? Wow.
So
That's crazy to think
But then we
about, isn't it?
grossed the first year in business.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You've had, tell us a little bit about some of the expansions. Now, I'm sure a lot of the audience has been to Limestone Branch, but that doesn't mean they know what's going on there now, because you expanded really big time last year. So tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
what you guys did.
Well, big time for us, you know.
Sure.
We're still, you know, a drop in the bucket compared to the big guys. But, you know, we went from making, you know, a barrel a day or so to a couple barrels a day. And then we just did a big expansion for us where we can do up to 10 barrels a day. And we're doing about 7 barrels a day right now. So, you know, that's still quite a few cases when you think about it.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Heck yeah. So that's,
And then, you know, the select will continue to be a blend for a long time.
Mhm.
Okay.
Just because the volume that we do in that, we wouldn't be releasing the 6 year if we were bottling, you know, our select. So,
Yeah.
but I think we have a winning formula with the select. I'm happy with it. So
nice. All right, Wes.
Yep.
Why don't we go ahead and vote? And we will leave time at the end if you guys have questions for Steve Beam. We'll leave some time after the vote. But let's do that next. So
Before we vote, does anybody have any last opinions as far as taste, and have they gone back to both? Because I noticed we were talking, I went back and nosed number 2, and I got this crazy heavy whiff of like Big League Chew bubble gum.
Exactly what I was getting ready to say, bubble gum.
Oh, really? Okay, so it's
Yeah.
not just me.
No,
Like in the absolute best way that you could get that was,
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's like more of a confectioner, sweetness, sugar kind of thing, but man, it is.
yeah, I definitely got
nose
bubble
is
gum
like-
on that.
That nose is opened up. It's amazing. Does anybody else get that? I mean, I'm sure everybody does with now that we've said it, but it hit me like a ton of bricks.
No, mine turns to cherries on that one. Like a really light cherry is what I usually get out of that one. I got my vote on that one, but I get like not a Luden's cherry or anything like that, but like some type of like a dark cherry.
Okay. Or cherry bubble gum, maybe?
Just for the record,
Cherry cola.
just for the record, I like them both.
All right.
Yes.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
Let's get to some voting then.
Okay.
And then obviously while you're voting, if you have any other tasting notes you want to add on with your vote, then feel free to. Tim seemed pretty anxious. He was the last one here, but we'll make him the first one to vote. Tim Swyatt.
One's the Dusty, two's the Select.
Which one's your favorite?
Which one's your favorite?
My favorite is sorry about that. I like number 2.
Number 2.
Okay.
All right. In no other particular order, I'm just going to go across my screen. We're going to go Jason Wickle.
I would concur. I think number 1 is the Dusty. Number 2 is my favorite.
All right. Let's go to the Robinsons.
I am opposite of the guys. I think number 1 is the new one, and I prefer it.
Okay.
Same here.
I thought this was going to be a close one. I think
Neil doesn't have a choice. Blink twice if you're okay, Neil.
he's the epitome of that duck on a pond. On the surface, he's just cool as can be.
Right.
But beneath the camera, his little legs are just paddling as crazy as.
Paddling away.
Love you, Tim.
Who invited Tim anyway? All right, let's go to Avery. You're up.
1, I think it's the Dusty, and 2, my favorite.
I like your beam decanter up above your shoulder, by the way.
Oh yeah, thanks.
That's
Oh,
that's the
Political one, right?
Republican political
Yeah.
one, right?
Yeah, the other guy's kind of in that.
Oh, there
corner.
it is.
Oh, there he is.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you got a
Sorta.
singing bass. I like it.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's go to Mr. Whitlatch, Bob.
Seems to me the Dusty is number 1, and that's also my favorite.
Right, we got a 1 and a 1. Tim Ball.
I got to side with Neil and Melanie. I think number 1 is this current, and the number 2 is Dusty. I like number 1.
All right, I love it. Let's go to the Iowa version of Eric Johnson. You're on.
He's got a lot riding on this. Longest streak. Streak's at 4. He's going for 5.
You know, I'm going with the minority. I think I feel like the number 2 is the Dusty, and I do prefer number 1. I think number 1 is the current Yellowstone Select, and that's my preference.
All right. Let's see. My screen keeps changing. Let's go to Blaine.
I'm thinking number 1 is the Dusty, and I like number 2 better.
Okay.
Right.
But they're
This
both
is
great.
Close as can be here. This
Yeah,
is
Steve,
crazy.
let's get a count real quick.
Let's
We're
get a count.
close to
Let's get a count.
halfway anyway.
I did get the vote from the legend too. So this our totals include the legend here. So he did send me in a thing. So right now we're sitting at Dusty 5-5.
Oh, wow.
Literally 1 and 2 is split evenly right down the middle. Half think number 1's the Dusty, half think number 2's the Dusty. Right now the favorite is number 1. It's close though, 6-4. 6-4.
like it.
Number 1 is the leader.
All right, we're gonna go to a last second shot, I think, here.
It might,
All
yeah,
right.
come down to the literally. It could come down to Steve Beam. We'll see.
All right.
I
let's
know.
go- Yeah, he knows. Let's go
knows,
to
okay.
let's go to Mr. Bill.
I had to take another taste of it.
I
Um,
noticed that.
I like both of them an awful lot, but I believe that the
Wes, never throw it to Bill with just ask him if he likes it though in the middle of a live event with the guest on there. Yeah. He will throw you under the bus. It happened to me. I asked because I thought he'd just say I like it, but if I threw it to him and he's like, it's just okay. I'm not really a big fan.
I think number
Some
1
people-
is the
people like
Dusty.
Okay.
And at first, number 1 was my favorite. And then after letting them air and breathe and tasting them several times, I think I like number 2 best.
2. Okay.
Got a bubblegum fan. All right, let's go to Mike Gascamp. He's on the scene at the base of some mountain there.
Yeah, so I think I kind of fell back to color a little bit and maybe even a little bit of clarity. So I think number 1 is the Dusty, and it's also my favorite.
All right, 2 votes for numero uno there.
Okay.
Let's go to Shad.
Shad.
I believe that the Dusty is number 2 and number 1 is my favorite.
And there's the picture.
Right in front of the distillery. Yeah.
All right. You got his vote, right, Steve?
I did, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's locked in.
Oh, let's see. Let's go to Chip. Chip, you were up.
Yes, sir. I think number 1 is the Dusty and number 2 is my favorite of the 2.
All right. All right. Thanks, sir. Let's go to Michael Blosser.
Well, Chip and gas can. I said hi.
You just did.
I would think that number 2 is the Dusty and number 1 is my favorite.
Okay.
Choose the Dusty.
So close. So close.
All right, Scott. Let's go to Scott Cochran.
I'm going to let my wife go, Lisa.
She'll go
Sorry,
first. Lisa
her.
goes first. Okay.
Okay.
Then Scott.
I think number 1 is Dusty and my favorite is number 2.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm with Bob and Mike. I think 1 is Dusty and 1 is my favorite.
Hey, Scott, I got a question for you. Do you have any bookers?
Do I have?
Yeah, do you have any bookers? in
Hang
your
on.
store?
Probably a couple.
Yeah.
Oh, good deal. Let's see. Brad and Sally. I don't think we've been to Brad yet.
I believe number 1 is the Dusty and number 2 is my favorite. And I'm doing that only because it's always change at the last minute. I'm not changing this time. Initial was.
He's going with it. Okay.
Yep, I'm going with it.
With this
And
Ocean Law.
Sally says hi to
Sally, we missed you.
everybody. She's off camera. She's zoomed out.
She's all righty.
I'm gonna vote with Fred tonight, so whatever he said.
Fred's not here.
Oh, I thought Fred.
Right. I think.
Did
we
you
have
get Bob Whitlatch?
everyone-
Did Bob vote?
Bob did.
Okay. Has everybody voted?
How many, has anyone besides Steve and Steve, sorry, have anyone else not voted? I'm going across. I don't think we've missed anybody.
No one's raising their hand.
All right, I think we're good. So Steve Akley, you're up.
Whew,
Sir.
this is close. I'm nervous. I'm not confident, but I think number 2 is the Dusty and number 1 is my favorite.
All right. Steve Beam.
So number 1 is the Dusty and number 2 is the new.
All right. So all the votes are in. Steve, what are our votes?
It is a close one. The Dusty, by a small majority, 12-8, was voted as the Dusty. So number 1 was voted as the Dusty. Favorite, 1 had 11 votes and 2 had 9 votes. So
okay, so basically split down the middle.
Yeah, pretty close. Pretty close.
All right, so I'll reveal, as expected, Mr. Beam is right on the money. Number 1 is the Dusty.
He got it.
Which means we have, like Jeopardy, we have the champion who beats a long running champion doesn't stand up very long. I think Eric missed that one. So his streak ended at 4. Does anyone else have a streak of less than 4?
I'm more pissed I got it right because I was on a pretty good losing streak.
Mike Gascamp is putting up the 3 sign. It sounds like he's got this is his 3rd or 4th.
Gascamp's the leader then. 3.
Yeah, I think I've gotten him since old granddad.
Okay.
All right. We'll take it. We'll
Might have 3 wrong in a row at this
3
point.
wrong in a row. Yeah.
All right. We'll you get a Razzie award at the end of the year.
For the record, the legend got it wrong again. So
wow.
Oh
he
no.
got it wrong. He got it wrong remotely.
I'm telling you, it's a mental thing. He's got the
Yeah,
yips,
once
like
it
putting.
happens to you,
It's like putting. He's got the yips. He can't get away from it.
Yeah. Just real quick, Wes, your next event is a George Dickel tasting. Tell us a little bit about that one, scheduled for March 9th.
Yeah, so this is I'm super excited about this. So I'm a Kentucky guy, as most everybody knows. So I'm true blue Kentucky bourbon, beats everyone else's bourbon, no offense. However, this region of the US, I think it's more of the Ohio Valley and the temperature swings and the limestone shelf and everything kind of is the real reason. So there's some good whiskey in surrounding states. Tennessee is one of those. To me, I like this one for a couple of reasons. I obviously know who George Dickel is. I know about Cascade Hollow. I myself have done zero research in the past on that distillery. So I'm looking forward to just digging into the history of that distillery. It's a massive operation. They put out a ton of whiskey all the time. They have a bit of with whiskey enthusiasts, there's a bit of a love-hate type of thing with Dickel. So, some people think it's not very appealing. Other people really like what's coming out of it. And I've never had a dusty bourbon from Cascade Hollow or Dickel. So I was able to acquire a bottle, and if nothing else, it just fits my curiosity, if nothing else. But I can tell you that this dusty, I haven't gone and grabbed the off the shelfer yet. I'll grab it this week, but there's no way it's any darker than that dusty is. I mean, it is as dark as any bourbon I've ever seen. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. If nothing else, I'm going to learn a lot about a distillery that's got probably a pretty rich history. I just haven't taken a lot of time and dug into it till now.
So yeah, it should be a good event. We've got about half the tickets left. So half the tickets are sold for that one. We still got about half left, which is so opportunities there. If you guys want to attend that, it'd be great. A little bit of a cheaper one than normal too. So that's something you may want to check out. I'm trying to get Nicole Austin, the master distiller there. I've been in contact with her. She says she wants to do it. Haven't been able to get it nailed down though. I can't 100% say she's going to be there. She says she's interested, doesn't get an opportunity to try a lot of the old stuff like that. So she's interested in the event as well, but haven't got, I'll blast it out on social media if I can get that. But right now,
Okay.
still working on it, still working on it.
Well, hopefully she'll be there. If not, I'll do what I do, and I'll bring the history, and we'll have a good time with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. With that, I'd like to open it up now. If you guys have any questions for Steve Beam, obviously a great opportunity to ask him any questions that you like. He's got such an awesome family history and he's doing great things now. So feel free to ask about any of that kind of cool stuff.
Going down in July, right? Steve, I don't really have a question. I just want to say thank you.
I will just say that when I was out in Yellowstone, we were at a restaurant and they had Yellowstone on the back bar. And so I was there with a few people. We ordered Yellowstone, and the waitress brought us the drink, and because I just had it neat, and I took one sip and I looked at her, I was like, that's not Yellowstone.
Really?
And sure enough, it was some Montana whiskey that she was trying to pass off as Kentucky bourbon, but it was, so I have a pretty good track record of knowing what
knowing your own product,
what's your own
product is.
That's cool. Shad, what were you going to say there? Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I'm just grateful. He's always a great host. Every time that I run into him at the distillery, always been just so polite and so friendly with everybody there. So just really grateful for your personality, and we drink it here, man.
Well, thank you, and I am very appreciative of that. And everybody in this group and everybody out there who allows me to do what I do, and so I am sincerely grateful for that, because I can make it all day long, but unless people are out there, enjoying it, it doesn't really do us much good. So thank you for allowing me to do what I like to do.
Nice.
Thank you,
What else you guys want to know? Any
Hey,
questions?
Steve, I got one for you.
Okay.
Let my doorbell finish off. The food just got here. Any updates on minor case? Are you going to do anything different with the minor case line? Any unique expressions?
Right
Something
now,
different?
we're just holding with what we have. With MGP, now in the mix, it complicates things a little bit for the rye because of their rye brands. So we'll see how that shakes out. Gotcha. But the good note is that minor cases, case sales continue to climb, and Europe has taken off. We'll sell more in Europe this year than we sell in the United States. So that's kind of crazy.
Wow. Yeah. That is an excellent product too, Steve. So very, very good. Very enjoyable. So hopefully it stays the same. I mean,
yeah, well, that product that we have, the sherry cask finish, should stay the same.
Okay.
From now on, but it's just adding another, I'd really like to add like a 4 or 6 year straight rye.
Yeah.
Since it's a rye brand, I think we should have a straight rye, but we'll see where that goes.
Okay. Fair enough.
All
Anything
right.
else?
So rye, bourbon, blah, blah, blah. When's the barrel aged vodka coming out?
You have to talk. Who did that? One of the vodkas.
I'm kidding. No comment required.
Yeah, one of the vodkas did it.
Did they?
Yeah, I think it was. I can't even remember. It seemed like. Yeah, one of them did a barrel aged vodka, and I was like, really?
Yeah, that's what the world needs.
Sounds like a
What's
Diageo.
the point?
Yeah, exactly. Anything else, gang? All right. On that
The
note,
gin. Yeah. Any other gin experiments coming out? You still tinkering with?
We are going to do
botanicals?
some. We are going to do some gins that will be just distillery only at first. But I'm working on one right now. I think we may do a barrel aged gin. So I'm working on the formulation that will go into the barrel. So
We are gin people.
yeah. Have you tried our gin?
I have not. No.
oh, you need to. Yeah.
You should. It's a unique expression, and I'm proud of it, and most people really enjoy it.
Oh, it's amazing. Once you get past, I won't name the brand, but once you get past the traditional gin, it's amazing what you can do with gin. So
right.
With the botanicals. So
yeah. And if people are expecting that and wanting that, they're usually not happy with what I have. But if people who are open-minded and they truly enjoy it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
I'm willing to give it a try. Because I don't like traditional.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Don't say it.
You know, I like gin. I don't drink it often, and it has to be warm outside for me to drink gin. I personally think of it as a summer drink. And just like I like Minor Case more in the summertime than I do in the wintertime because it's a light, fruity whiskey, and I like that.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Well, on that note, I'd like to thank Mr. Steve Beam. Let's give him a round of applause for being here with us tonight.
Well, thank you.
That family history and
you,
playing along. I think that's always cool when we get someone to come and play along with us. That's great. And of course, our master of ceremonies to go does all that research, finds the whiskey for us, Mr. Wes Hardin. Wes Hardin.
Thank you, Wes.
Good job, Wes. Sir.
With that, we'll say goodbye. I'll turn off the recorder. I'll stick around if you have any questions or anything like that. We talk a little whiskey afterwards, but always say goodbye and bye for now and see you on an event soon.
We'll see you later.
See you, everyone.
Thanks.